In my previous life, when the true heiress returned, she accused my biological parents of deliberately switching us at birth. She claimed they had caused her to suffer for 20 years while living outside the family. She demanded that I serve as her slave in the Smith family for 20 years before she would let me go. Later, in order to monopolize the entire family fortune, she murdered her own sister and framed me for the crime, resulting in my death sentence, in this life. When I returned to the day of my birth, I opened my eyes only to see that the person who swapped us was the real heiress's mother. The glaring lights made me squint uncomfortably. In my blurred vision, a familiar figure was removing the identity bracelet from my wrist. Linda's well-maintained fingers trembled slightly, her meticulously manicured nails grazing my delicate skin several times. She trembled as she fastened the swapped wristband onto my hand. She turned to look at the real Smith family daughter in the neighboring incubator, her voice choked with suppressed sobs. "Baby, don't blame mommy, this is the only way we can both be okay." The woman I had called Mom for 20 years in my past life, my adoptive mother from my past life, also the biological mother of the true heiress Teresa, yet now she displays a cruelty I had never seen before, in my previous life, on the day Teresa was recognized. The scene of Linda holding her and crying heart-wrenchingly is still vivid in my mind. At that time, she pointed at me and screamed hoarsely. It was her parents who, out of selfishness, separated us mother and daughter for 20 years. How ironic those accusations seem now. It turned out that this 20-year-long tragedy was nothing but a meticulously orchestrated performance she had directed from start to finish. And because of this lie, I lived like a penitent prisoner in the Smith family. Enduring the escalating torment from her and her daughter day after day, I desperately kicked my frail little legs, trying to catch the nurse's attention, but only managed a weak, kitten-like whimper. Linda frantically glanced around. She had deliberately chosen this time when the nurses were changing shifts. After making sure no one was watching, she gave me one last glance before leaving the neonatal room without looking back, just as despair was about to overwhelm me. A small figure quietly slipped in, 10-year-old Sarah, dressed in a pink princess dress, tiptoed in like a startled fawn. She stood on her toes to look around, and after confirming Linda had gone far enough, suddenly rushed to my incubator. "I'm sorry," she whispered softly, her nimble fingers quickly readjusting the wristband. Fresh pinch marks stood out starkly against the pale skin of her wrist. After completing this, Sarah didn't leave immediately. She curled up in the shadows behind the storage locker, hugging herself into a tight ball. She was also reborn. In her previous life, a strange girl suddenly appeared in her home, in the living room of the Smith family villa. I sat on the edge of the sofa, my fingers unconsciously twisting the hem of my skirt as I watched the unfamiliar girl before me. She wore faded jeans, an old t-shirt, and her hair was dry and frizzy, but her eyes burned like venomous fire, glaring at me fiercely as if to scorch right through me. "This is Teresa, starting today. She is your sister, Mr. Smith's voice was deep, carrying an undeniable command. I looked blankly at Linda, only to see her already in tears, rushing over to hug Teresa tightly, her voice trembling. "My daughter, Mom has finally found you." At that moment, I finally realized that Teresa and I had been switched at birth 20 years ago. I became the heiress of the Smith family, living in luxury and privilege. Meanwhile, she grew up in an ordinary household, lost both parents in a car accident during middle school, and had only a bedridden older brother left. She was sent to an orphanage, kicked out as an adult, struggling at the bottom of society, enduring all kinds of hardships. Teresa hates me. Her hatred comes naturally. She believes I stole her 20 years of privileged life, living in a villa, endless beautiful clothes to wear, an abundance of jewelry, attending elite schools, learning piano and dancing, and she lived in a damp, dark rented room, wore clothes bought for 10 yuan for 3 pieces at street stalls, worked late into the night every day, yet the money she earned was barely enough to fill her stomach. So, she hated me. She hated openly and without restraint. Linda hated me more than Teresa did. It was only later that I learned she had an affair while married and became pregnant, fearing exposure. She secretly switched me with Teresa in the delivery room. She gave her biological daughter to an ordinary family to raise, but took me back to the Smith family. This decision wasn't made out of maternal love, but to cover up her scandal. Although she raised me, she never gave me genuine affection. My wardrobe only ever contained the most basic necessities. My allowance was just enough for school expenses, and piano and dance lessons were merely superficial displays for outsiders. Her most frequent words to me were, "Being part of the Smith family is a blessing you've earned." Her fingers, painted with bright red nail polish, would jab fiercely at my forehead, her gaze icy. "Don't covet what isn't yours." Back then, I didn't understand why a mother would treat her own child like that. It wasn't until Teresa returned that I finally understood. Turns out, she was never my mother to begin with. After Teresa returned, Linda seemed determined to make up for 20 years of neglect. Cartier bracelets, Chanel handbags, Tiffany necklaces, these items flowed like water into Teresa's room. Whenever I passed by, I could always hear her deliberately raising her voice. "Mom, this is too expensive." Back when I was in the orphanage, every time this happened, Linda would glare at me with disgust, as if I were the one to blame. Teresa's revenge came swiftly and mercilessly. My clothes would mysteriously disappear. My homework notebooks were often stained with ink, and even on my 20th birthday, she accidentally pushed me down the stairs. I fell, bleeding from my head, while Linda just coldly remarked, "Stop pretending, Teresa has suffered far more than you." I curled up on the cold floor, blood trickling from my temple, my vision blurred. Teresa stood at the top of the stairs, looking down at me with a triumphant smile curling at the corners of her lips. Linda wrapped an arm around her shoulders, comforting her gently. "Ignore her. Mommy will take you to pick out a new dress." Later, Mr. Smith passed away. Teresa killed her sister Sarah, the only person who was kind to me, in order to monopolize the family fortune. But Linda pushed me out as the scapegoat. In court, she tearfully pointed at me, saying, it was her. She was jealous of Teresa and capable of such a heinous act. The reporter's camera flashes blinded me, and the overwhelming public opinion came crashing down. That fake heiress framed the real one for her sister's murder. How vicious. See, not blood-related after all. A thankless wolf raised by hand, standing in the defendant's dock. I suddenly laughed at the hypocritical sight of Linda and Teresa hugging each other in tears. Without family, even the only sister who treated me kindly is gone. I no longer have the will to live. So, I lowered my head and whispered, "I did it." I was sentenced to death. The nurse gently placed me into my birth mother's arms. "The baby is very healthy and can be discharged," the nurse said with a smile. My mother held me carefully, as if cradling the most precious treasure in the world. Even her breath was light, her eyes were red, and a gentle kiss landed on my cheek. "Our daughter," she smiled, her voice as soft as the spring breeze. My father stood beside me, his tall figure slightly bent, his broad palm gently stroking my swaddling clothes, his eyes brimming with tender warmth. "She's so tiny," he murmured, his voice laced with unconcealable joy. I blinked, looking at them. These were my parents, my true family. The day we went home, the sunlight was radiant. My mother held me carefully the whole way, afraid that I might suffer even the slightest jolt. My father walked beside us, occasionally reaching out to gently stroke the swaddling clothes, his eyes filled with unconcealed tenderness. "Sister is back." As soon as we entered the house, a clear young voice rang out. I met my brother, the same brother who, in my past life, chose to end his own life after becoming paralyzed, not wanting to burden Teresa. But now, he's perfectly fine. He's a sunny young boy, wearing a clean white t-shirt, with vibrant energy radiating from his eyes and brows. He leaned in, carefully touching my fingers, his eyes filled with joy. "Your little sister is so cute," he said with a smile. Dad looked at him with amusement. "Then why don't you give your sister a name?" The brother tilted his head in thought, then suddenly his eyes lit up. "Let's call her Tina, with Nana as her nickname." I blinked, then suddenly reached out and grabbed his finger tightly. The brother was startled for a moment, then smiled even brighter. "Nana likes this name." "Yes, I like it. Our home is not big, but it's warm and bright. There are a few potted plants on the windowsill. Sunlight filters through the sheer curtains onto the wooden floor, and the air carries a faint aroma of home-cooked meals. Mom prepares delicious dishes for us in different ways every day. The sight of her bustling in the kitchen with an apron tied around her waist was the most comforting image of my childhood. "Nana, come taste the cake Mom just learned to make." She would always call me over with a smile, her eyes brimming with tenderness. No matter how busy Dad was, he would always find time to play chess with my brother and help me with my homework. When his broad palm ruffled my hair, he would always chuckle and say, "How is my little girl so clever?" Every time my brother comes home from school, he brings me something delicious, sometimes a piece of candy, sometimes a small cake. On weekends, He holds my hand and takes me to the park, patiently watching ants move or counting clouds in the sky with me, Nana. I'll always protect you, he often says to me, so this is the life I was meant to have. Later, Dad's business flourished, and we moved from an ordinary neighborhood to a villa in the capital city. No matter where we lived, the house was always filled with a warm atmosphere. After graduating from university, my brother took over the family company. He was smart and capable, making the business thrive. Nana, I'll take care of you from now on, he said, gently ruffling my hair with a tender smile. Dad took Mom back to their hometown and started a leisurely retirement life. They spend their days gardening, taking walks, and occasionally video calling us, chattering away with reminders to eat well and take care of our health. Curled up on the sofa, watching my parents' loving smiles on the phone screen, my heart melts as if soaked in honey, warm, complete, and happy. At the age of 20, I met the Smith couple on the tree-lined path in front of the university library. Mr. Smith was still impeccably dressed in a suit, his hair neatly combed, though a few strands of gray had appeared at his temples. Linda remained as elegant and refined as ever, dressed in a Chanel suit with a Hermes scarf, but the wrinkles at the corners of her eyes had deepened, and even foundation couldn't conceal the traces of exhaustion. When they saw me, tears welled up in their eyes instantly, and they reached out with trembling hands. Our daughter, I took a step back, avoiding her touch. You've mistaken me for someone else. Linda's tears fell like broken strings of pearls, her carefully applied eye makeup smudging. She stepped forward, trying to grab my wrist. Mom accidentally lost you. Won't you come home with me? I coldly withdrew my hand, my gaze landing on her meticulously manicured nails. That same vibrant shade of red, identical to the one in my past life. How ironic, these hands, which had poked my forehead countless times, calling me an imposter who seized another's place. These hands, which had personally fastened the wristband bearing Teresa onto my wrist. These hands, which had pointed at me in court, tearfully accusing me of being a murderer. And now, she actually has the nerve to say I'm her daughter. Excuse me, ma'am. I curled my lips into a polite yet distant smile. I think you've made a mistake. I am my parents' biological child. I plucked a strand of hair from my head and handed it to her. If you don't believe me, you can go ahead and do a paternity test. Linda's face instantly changed. She glanced guiltily at Mr. Smith, her lips trembling. And no need. Back then in the delivery room, it was just our two families. You must be my daughter. I thought the matter would end there, but I underestimated Linda's determination. Early the next morning, as soon as I stepped out of the dormitory building, I saw her standing under the plane tree in front of the teaching building. The scorching sun blazed overhead as she stood there in her expensive suit and stiletto heels, beads of sweat trickling down from her meticulously styled hairline, yet she stubbornly remained in place, her eyes fixed unwaveringly on the school building's entrance. My classmates began whispering among themselves, "Isn't that the wife of the Smith Group's chairman? I heard her daughter was switched at birth. How tragic. Raising someone else's daughter as her own for 20 years. While her real child suffered outside all this time, Tina is actually her daughter. They don't look alike at all." Rumors spread like wildfire. On the third day, the counselor called me in for a talk. "Tina, Mrs. Smith has already spoken to the school administration." She hesitated. "Maybe you should talk to her first." On the 10th day, I finally gave in. "Fine, I'll go back with you." As I said this, I saw a sickly light flare up in Linda's eyes, like a drowning person clutching at their last lifeline. On the way back to the Smith family's estate, she gripped my hand tightly, as if afraid I might run away. The scenery outside the car window rapidly receded as I quietly gazed at this city, both unfamiliar and familiar. The Smith family, I'm back. The Smith family villa remained as splendid as ever. Standing in the center of the living room, I looked around. Everything here was exactly the same as in my past life. Teresa stood at the top of the stairs. She wore a simple cotton dress, her fingers nervously twisting the hem, her face as pale as paper. The moment she saw me, she instinctively took a step back, like a startled rabbit, her eyes filled with fear. What a familiar posture, just like my past self. The glow of the crystal chandelier illuminated her pale face, revealing several bruises on her wrist. Noticing my gaze, she hastily covered the marks with her sleeve. Linda's scream suddenly erupted through the villa. "Get out, you imposter!" She grabbed Teresa's luggage, throwing each piece out the door. 20 years. I raised you for 20 years, and it turns out you're not even my daughter. Teresa knelt on the floor, tears splashing onto the marble tiles. Trembling, she reached for Linda's skirt. Her voice choked with sobs. "Mom, don't call me Mom. Go find your country bumpkin parents." Linda kicked her away, her meticulously maintained face twisted in fury. "Security, drag her out." Teresa was hauled out the door by two security guards gripping her arms. Struggling, she turned her head, her gaze piercing through the open doorway, locking onto me. In that look, there was hatred, there was resentment. Teresa thought my parents were farmers from the countryside and looked down on them. She kept lingering at the entrance of the villa, yet, after finding out my brother was the CEO of Ye Corporation, she immediately went to seek him out. She followed me into my brother's company. I walked in with familiar ease. Teresa was stopped by the receptionist. "I'm sorry, miss, but you can't enter without an appointment." "Why can she go in but I can't?" Teresa pointed at me and questioned the receptionist. The receptionist pursed her lips and said politely, "This is our young lady." Teresa pushed the receptionist away and angrily retorted, I am the Scott family's young lady. I am your CEO Scott's sister. She's just an imposter." The receptionist couldn't stop her. Teresa rushed into her brother's office, crying her heart out. "Brother, I'm your sister. You can't abandon me." Her brother looked at her quietly, then took out a document from the drawer. "This is a paternity test," he said softly. "You're indeed not our parents' child." Teresa's face turned deathly pale in an instant. Her hands trembled as she opened the document, and when she saw the final result, her legs gave way, collapsing to the ground. "Impossible, this can't be true," she murmured to herself, tears blurring her vision. "Then whose family do I belong to?" Her brother coldly dialed a number. "Escort her out. From now on, don't let any random person in." Her brother drove Teresa out. Her eyes were like venom, fixed on me with deadly intensity. "It's you, it must be your doing, you can't be this greedy." I smiled faintly without responding. As her figure disappeared beyond the door, my brother approached me with a furrowed brow. "Nana, what on earth is going on?" I shrugged, plopped onto the sofa, rummaged through the coffee table drawer for a bag of chips, and said nonchalantly, "I have no idea either." That couple suddenly appeared in front of me, insisting I'm their daughter. My brother looked at me helplessly and reached over to help me open the potato chip bag. "Nonsense. You're the little princess of our family." He paused, his expression turning serious. "Do you want me to help?" I stuffed a chip into my mouth, crunching loudly, my eyes curving into crescents as I smiled. "No, since it's like this, I'll just play along with them." My brother ruffled my hair and sighed. "You," his tone was full of doting affection. Early the next morning, as soon as I entered the school gate, I saw Teresa standing in the square in front of the teaching building. The sunlight fell on her frail figure. She was wearing a faded dress, her hair tied up messily, looking utterly exhausted. As soon as she saw me, she rushed over and knelt down before me with a thud. "Please," she sobbed uncontrollably, her voice so loud that surrounding students stopped in their tracks. "Don't drive me away. If my brother won't acknowledge me, I truly have nowhere to go." A crowd quickly gathered to watch the scene. Whispers spread among the onlookers. "My God. Is the real heiress of the Smith family really this cruel? She was just a baby back then. She didn't do anything wrong." Teresa raised her head, tears streaming down her cheeks, yet a faint trace of smugness flickered in her eyes. She continued in a trembling voice, "Sister, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Please, don't drive me away. The Smith family doesn't want me, and my birth parents don't want me either. Just give me a place to sleep. I'll do anything you ask. I won't compete with you for mom and dad. No, uncle and aunt. They raised me for 20 years. I just can't bear to let go." How can she be so greedy, clinging to both sets of parents? Just think, leaving a girl like her homeless. Someone with such poor character doesn't deserve to be at our school. Exactly. Expel her. As everyone hurled insults at me, Teresa curled her lips into a smirk, her expression growing increasingly aggrieved. The mother and daughter's methods were exactly the same. I watched her performance quietly, feeling a chill in my heart. What about me? In my past life, I was the real victim. Because of that mother and daughter, my family was destroyed, my parents died young, and my brother became paralyzed and committed suicide. My life was completely ruined by them. If it weren't for that mother and daughter, our family wouldn't have suffered so much. In this life, growing up in love, having a happy family, with loving parents and an accomplished older brother, yet I hate them even more. If Sarah hadn't brought me back, the tragedy of my past life would have repeated itself. This is what Linda and Teresa deserve. I took out my phone and dialed Linda's number. Your daughter, please come and deal with this. In less than half an hour, Linda stormed into the campus in her high heels. She grabbed Teresa by the arm, her voice sharp and piercing. You've occupied my daughter's place for 20 years. And now you're still harassing her. Teresa stumbled from the pole, tear stains still on her face. I watched the farce with cold eyes, a mocking smile curling at the corner of my lips. That night, I finally relented, let her stay, just like the me from my past life. Staying would only bring more pain. From that day on, the Smith family began to play out a familiar script. Teresa, here's your allowance for this month. Linda casually tossed her a few crumpled bills. Make it last. The Smith family won't contribute another penny to your living expenses from now on. Teresa's wardrobe was left with only a few outdated old clothes. Her once carefully decorated princess room had now become a small storage space next to the servants' quarters. Mom, I want to intern at a company, Teresa asked cautiously. What company? Linda sneered. Do you still think you're a young lady? Teresa accidentally broke a teacup. Linda grabbed a feather duster and hit her with it. Useless, can't even hold a cup properly. Teresa huddled in the corner, trembling with her knees hugged to her chest, looking exactly like my past self. I stood on the second-floor corridor. Looking down at this scene, Teresa glanced up and saw me. A flash of resentment flickering in her eyes, I gave her a faint smile before turning back to my own spacious, well-lit bedroom. As for Teresa and Linda, let them slowly taste the bitter fruits of their own making while tormenting each other. I sat on the sofa as usual, leisurely enjoying Linda's scolding of Teresa. The sound of the door lock turning suddenly rang out. Mr. Smith pushed the door open and entered, followed by a familiar figure, a sharp suit, slightly curly short hair, and makeup that was refined yet understated. It's Sarah, Dad. Teresa, as if grasping at a life-saving straw, immediately rushed over to hide behind him, tears welling up instantly. I just accidentally broke a cup. Mr. Smith frowned, his gaze sweeping over the scattered teacup fragments on the floor before landing on Linda, who was holding a feather duster. A clear look of annoyance crossed his face. What's going on here? The whole house is in chaos. Over the years, Linda had been living the life of a wealthy housewife at home, doing nothing but playing mahjong, getting beauty treatments, and quarreling with Teresa. At first, Mr. Smith would try to reason with her, but Linda would always throw a tantrum, accusing him of favoritism. Later, his business trips became more frequent, and he spent less and less time at home. Linda glared fiercely at Teresa. She's not our daughter. I've already gone above and beyond by letting her stay here. Then she turned and grabbed my arm, her voice instantly softening. Honey, this is our real daughter. She pulled me forward and gave me a little push. Nana, come here. This is Dad. I nodded without saying a word, but my gaze lingered on Sarah. Seeing my lack of response, Linda reluctantly added, this is your sister, Sarah. Sarah frowned slightly, her sharp eyes scanning the living room before finally settling on me with a hint of scrutiny. I tilted my head slightly, a faint smile curling at the corners of my lips, and called out softly, Sis, just like I did in my past life. In my previous life with the Smith family, the only thing I missed was this sister. Linda knew I wasn't her biological daughter. If not for fear of arousing suspicion from outsiders, she wouldn't have wanted to spend a single penny on me. Mr. Smith was solely focused on having his son inherit the company, showing no concern for me and turning a blind eye to Linda's harsh treatment. Only Sarah, she appeared cold on the surface, yet every time Linda punished me, she was the one who stood in front to protect me. When I went hungry, she would, coincidentally, bring an extra lunchbox. When I was in confinement, she would pass by my room and slip a book or a pack of cookies through the door crack. So this time, I didn't hide it. Sarah clearly noticed. Her pupils slightly contracted, showing a brief moment of surprise, but quickly returned to her usual aloof demeanor. She just nodded at me and said, Mr. Smith rubbed his temples and said wearily, all right, I just got back from a business trip. Let's keep it quiet, don't let the neighbors laugh at us. He turned to Sarah. Sarah, come with me to the study. The two of them went upstairs one after the other, their aloof and distant silhouettes strikingly similar. Seeing Mr. Smith leave, Linda immediately shook off my hand and glared fiercely at Teresa. What are you standing there for? Clean up the broken pieces on the floor. Teresa bit her lip as she crouched down to pick up the broken pieces. not daring to make a sound even when her finger was cut and bleeding. I stood aside, my gaze following Sarah's figure as she disappeared around the stairwell corner. In this lifetime, some things still unfolded along their predetermined paths. Mr. Smith still held her in high regard, but Sarah had returned. Linda and Teresa are destined not to have it as smooth as in their past lives. They will ultimately reap what they sow, and I would be more than happy to give them an extra push. After the study door closed, the air in the living room suddenly froze. Teresa huddled in the corner, her face as pale as paper. Linda sneered and suddenly grabbed her hair. "You little bitch, you learned to tattle, think someone's got your back." Teresa's tears fell from the pain, but she dared not resist, only whimpering softly, "Mom, I was wrong." "Shut up." Linda slapped her without hesitation. "Who's your mom?" I stood at the stairwell, watching this scene with cold eyes. Boring. In my past life, Teresa watched me being tormented by Linda just like this. Now that the roles are reversed, she doesn't even have half the backbone I once had. Tired from reading, I turned and went upstairs to rest. Early the next morning, sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows into the dining room. I leisurely ate my fried eggs while Mr. Smith sat at the head of the table reading the newspaper. And Sarah quietly sipped her coffee. Linda suddenly spoke up, "Honey, why don't we let Nana learn at the company? After all, she is our own daughter." Snap. Mr. Smith abruptly closed the newspaper, his face darkening. "Nonsense. The company is currently managed by Sarah, and she's doing perfectly fine. We don't need another person." Mr. Smith had already seen through Linda's intentions. Linda argued unwillingly. "But Nana is our biological daughter." "That's enough," Mr. Smith interrupted her. "You know very well how much you has contributed to the company over the years. If you say such things again, you can go back to your parents' home to cool off for a few days." The restaurant fell silent instantly. Sarah held her coffee cup, her expression still calm. Linda's face turned pale, then flushed with anger, before she finally shot Sarah a fierce glare. After breakfast, I knocked on Sarah's door. "Come in." Her cool voice responded from inside, pushing the door open. I found Sarah standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, the sunlight outlining her slender silhouette. She turned around, raising an eyebrow at me. "What is it?" I closed the door, leaned against the wall, and got straight to the point. "Sis, why would Linda come looking for me?" Sarah was silent for a moment before walking over to the desk and sitting down. "Father found out Teresa isn't his biological child." She pulled out a document and slid it toward me. It was a paternity test report. Sarah's tone was calm, but her fingers unconsciously tapped the desk. "She's afraid father will find out about her affair, so she's in a hurry to bring you back as a shield." I scoffed, as expected. Too bad she didn't know that this time the switch didn't succeed like before. Sarah suddenly looked up at me. "You don't seem surprised by any of this." I walked over and sat down across from her, meeting her gaze directly. "Because I know." "What do you know?" "I know Teresa isn't your biological daughter. I know Linda would come looking for me, and I also know." I paused. "What happened in the later part of my past life?" Sarah's pupils slightly contracted. "Teresa plotted to kill you to fight for the inheritance." My voice grew hoarse, and I was framed by them to take the blame. Sarah remained silent for a long time after hearing this. The only sound left in the room was the ticking of the clock, and now, she finally spoke. "How has this life been for you?" I showed a genuine smile. "Very well. I have parents who love me and a brother who spoils me. They've given me a warm home. In my past life, I only realized upon death that Mom and Dad's deaths weren't accidents. It was Teresa's rebellious runaway that caused the car crash when they and my brother chased after her. In this life, without Teresa, Mom, Dad, and my brother are all safe and sound." Sarah nodded, her gaze softening slightly. "That's good." She stood up, walked over to me, and suddenly reached out to ruffle my hair. "Just like when we were kids. In this life, I won't let anyone hurt you." My nose tingled, and I nearly shed tears, but Sarah withdrew her hand, resuming her composed demeanor. "Since Linda has brought you back, we should make the most of this opportunity." I wiped the moisture from the corner of my eye and curled my lips into a smile. "Of course, in this life, we are no longer weaklings at the mercy of others, but the hunter." No sooner had I left Sarah's room than a familiar figure flashed by the corner. Teresa hid in the shadows of the hallway, her eyes fixed intently on Sarah's door. She clenched her fists, her nails digging deep into her palms. "Why," she muttered through clenched lips, "why does she get all the benefits?" Suddenly, her eyes lit up, and she turned to run downstairs. "Mom," Teresa pushed the door open with reddened eyes and fell to her knees with a thud. "Please give me a chance." Linda was painting her nails without looking up. "What madness is this again? Let me go to the company to learn." Teresa crawled forward on her knees, clinging to Linda's leg. "I promise to be filial to you from now on. I'll listen to everything you say." Linda sneered. I know you care about me the most." Teresa lifted her face, tears falling at just the right moment. "That Tina doesn't even want to acknowledge you. Only I truly see you as my mother." Linda's hand paused. She narrowed her eyes, studying Teresa, then suddenly smiled. "You've reminded me of something, honey." Mr. Smith and Sarah were handling documents in the study when Linda pushed the door open. "I'd been thinking, maybe we should let Teresa join the company." Mr. Smith frowned. "What's the matter now?" "Nana isn't close to us," Linda said with grievance. "Teresa has been with us for 20 years after all. We know her inside out. She'll be graduating from college soon." Just as Mr. Smith was about to object, Sarah suddenly spoke up. "I think it's a good idea." The study fell silent at once. Mr. Smith looked at his daughter in surprise. Sarah closed the file, her expression calm. "The company is short-staffed lately. An extra pair of hands wouldn't hurt." She glanced at Linda, the corners of her lips curling into a faint, elusive smile. "But you'll have to start from the bottom." I leaned against the wall, listening to the conversation inside, and couldn't help but chuckle softly. Sarah's move was truly brilliant. Let Teresa join the company, sure, starting from the very bottom. Being stepped on by everyone every day, with Teresa's temperament, it won't be long before her true colors show. As for Linda, she will soon realize how foolish this decision was. Teresa behaved exceptionally obediently after joining the company. She arrived at the office earliest and left latest every day, greeting everyone with a smile, even personally handling tasks like serving tea and water. Mr. Smith, seeing her diligence, gradually let his guard down and even occasionally praised her. Meanwhile, Sarah watched all this with cold indifference. She won't be able to keep up the act for long. Sarah stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, her fingertips lightly tapping the glass. "A viper will eventually bare its fangs." I sat on the sofa, flipping through company reports, and chuckled, then let her bite. 3 months later, Mr. Smith was suddenly hospitalized with a cerebral hemorrhage. The doctor said it was caused by prolonged exhaustion and excessive emotional fluctuations. Linda was crying pitifully outside the hospital ward, but in the blink of an eye, she went to find her lover, the company's CFO, Kevin. Teresa discovered the secret. Standing at the corner of the hallway, she watched Linda and Kevin kissing in the empty conference room, a cold glint of amusement flashing in her eyes. "So that's how it is," she murmured under her breath. "Mom, you've really handed me a golden opportunity." Teresa began to get close to Kevin. She pretended to accidentally discover their relationship and won Kevin's trust by appearing understanding and supportive. Soon, the two became involved. "President Sarah has been too tired lately. Shall I take over this project?" Teresa meekly suggested to Sarah. Since Mr. Smith fell ill, Teresa was promoted to assist Sarah. This was proposed by Sarah. Sarah glanced at her and nodded faintly. "All right." Teresa and Kevin colluded to tamper with the project. Sarah made multiple mistakes, causing significant losses to the company. The board began to question her competence. 6 months later, Sarah was voted out by the board. She calmly packed her things and left without a word of defense. Teresa stood at the office door, a triumphant smile curling at the corners of her lips. "Farewell, sister." Sarah walked away without looking back, her figure as straight and unyielding as a pine tree. Teresa got exactly what she wanted, Sarah's position. The first thing she did was to drive Linda out of the Smith family. "Get out," she sneered, ordering the servants to throw Linda's luggage outside. "Did you think I didn't know about you and Kevin? Tina is your illegitimate child, isn't she? Everything in the Smith family is mine now. Take your precious daughter and get out." Linda turned pale. You ungrateful wretch. I raised you for 20 years." "Raised me?" Teresa scoffed. "It was the Smith family who raised me. All you've given me these 20 years is humiliation." Teresa thought she had victory in the bag, unaware that everything was under our control. As she smugly prepared to take over the company at the board meeting, I pushed open the conference room door with the police in tow. "Miss Teresa, you are suspected of commercial fraud, embezzlement, and attempted murder. Please come with us." Her face turned deathly pale in an instant, and she stood up abruptly. On what grounds are you arresting me? I sneered and threw the evidence onto the table. Surveillance footage, financial fraud records, and the recording of her instructing someone to drug Mr. Smith. Linda suddenly stood up, trembling as she pulled out a bottle of medicine. Officer, this is the drug my daughter. No, it was Teresa who drugged my husband. I've kept it all this time. Teresa stared at her in disbelief. Mom, Linda turned her face away. Don't call me Mom, you murderer. The evidence in court was irrefutable. Teresa was sentenced to 15 years in prison for charges including commercial fraud, embezzlement, and attempted murder. Linda wore a satisfied smile in the gallery, as if everything had gone according to her plan. However, she celebrated too soon. That evening, at the Smith family villa, Sarah helped the recently discharged Mr. Smith sit on the sofa. Her expression grave, she pulled out a stack of photos, evidence of Linda and Kevin's secret rendezvous. Aunt Linda not only cheated, but there's something else you don't know, Sarah said, looking at Linda whose face had suddenly changed. Teresa is her biological daughter. Linda suddenly stood up. That's nonsense, Sarah sneered. Back then, you switched the babies in the delivery room and gave your own daughter to someone else to raise. But what you didn't know is, she paused. Her gaze sharp. I saw you switch the babies and then secretly switched them back. Linda collapsed onto the floor, shaking her head frantically. No, impossible. How could Teresa be my daughter, after all these years, the way I've treated her? Mr. Smith's face turned ashen as he suddenly raised his hand and slapped Linda hard across the face. You vile woman. He turned to Sarah, tears streaming down his aged face. Sarah, your father has failed you, and even more so, your mother. Sarah's eyes reddened. You truly betrayed Mom, right after she passed. You married your first love and even allowed her to mistreat me. Mr. Smith broke down in tears, collapsing to the ground in remorse. Sarah averted her gaze. She had long been disappointed in this father. Mr. Smith divorced Linda and expelled her from the Smith family. After handing over the company entirely to Sarah, he moved to the countryside for a quiet retirement, and I returned to the side of my family, who truly love me. One weekend, Sarah came to visit my home. My brother poured her a cup of tea and teased, Director Sarah, gracing us with your presence truly brings honor to our humble abode. Sarah, uncharacteristically, smiled and said, I'll come more often in the future. This time, fate has finally granted us the happy ending we deserve. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. The fake heiress and I were slapping each other when we fell from the 30th floor and died. After reincarnating, both of us became extremely cunning. I installed 80 surveillance cameras, while she brought 50 voice recorders. In public, our words were sweeter than honey, but when we fought, we moved faster than snipers, terrified of leaving any evidence for the other to exploit. Later, my parents brought home another girl, saying she was their biological child. And neither of us was. The girl looked shocked and blurted out, How are you both still alive? Both the fake heiress and I were stunned. I quietly swallowed the peanut powder that would have made her allergic. She stopped the master, who was howling that I was an evil spirit and must be executed by 1,000 cuts. Since the mastermind has come, don't even think about leaving. When I was reborn, my face still ached from the lingering pain of 89 slaps. The sound of them echoing in my ears, making me shiver involuntarily. Meanwhile, the fake heiress Nancy, standing opposite me, was also covering her face with a complicated expression. We were standing outside the door of a luxurious hotel room. Inside that hotel room lay the man we both liked, Chandler, the young master of the James family, moaning in discomfort due to the effects of some drugs. I immediately realized I had been reborn and was certain that Nancy across from me had also been reborn. Because in our previous life, she had grabbed my hair and swung me around like a green dragon crescent blade just to rush into the room and help Chandler detoxify, and now she's standing at the hotel entrance with me, refusing to go in, and we're both putting on that disgusting facade of false courtesy in perfect sync. After you, in our previous lives, Nancy and I, in our competition to become Chandler's fiancé, actually both drugged Chandler without consulting each other, stole his room key, and planned to sneak into his bed. Yet, we ended up running into each other at the hotel entrance. We fought fiercely, pulling each other's hair over who would go in to be Chandler's antidote, while inside, Chandler was already scratching at the door in desperation. After each of us had lost more than half our hair and some skin, we finally squeezed in together, the door slammed shut, followed by Chandler's screams. Then, Chandler's mother came to demand that I be the primary wife and Nancy the secondary. My dad was so angry he almost had a heart attack, pointing at them and saying, "What era is this? How can there still be talk of primary and secondary wives?" Mrs. Chandler wasn't the least bit intimidated, sitting there calmly and composed. "Well, who asked both your daughters to climb into my son's bed?" My son tried to run, but they caught him together and threw him back onto the bed. His manly pride was utterly shattered. Just as my dad was about to say more, the two of us actually spoke in unison. "We agree," because at that moment, Nancy and I were already at each other's throats, completely disregarding shame, dignity, or any sense of self-respect. There's only one word in both our hearts: win. Yet now, neither of us is willing to step in, because the lessons from our past lives were too painful. It's not that we've had some epiphany after being reborn, but rather that in our previous life, we suffered terribly at Chandler's hands. We both followed Chandler for 5 years without gaining any status. She had 3 children, 2 died, 1 from leukemia, while I miscarried 4 times and can no longer conceive. She walked with 1 child in her arms, another on her back, and a 3rd clinging to her leg. Only the one on her leg remained in the end. My face was sallow, my body emaciated. Once, when I went out during a strong wind, I fell to the ground and couldn't get back up. Despite being tormented like this, both of us gritted our teeth and persisted, determined to outdo the other in living well. On the day Chandler finally decided to publicly announce his engagement, the two of us were on the rooftop in a final showdown over who would attend the banquet. When we fell, we landed right at Chandler's feet as he stood below. Screams echoed around, yet Chandler remained indifferent. Beside his high-end custom leather shoes lay a pair of slender, fair girl's feet, adorned with diamond-studded high heels. My blood splattered onto those beautiful high heels. The owner of the high heels took a few steps back, her feet intertwining with Chandler's, likely embracing him. "Brother Chandler, they're really dead. I'm so scared." "Don't be afraid. I'll always protect you after we get married." So we let him play us for 5 years, and now he's found someone new. From the sound of it, they weren't even surprised by our deaths. Then I lost consciousness, and then I was reborn. I can't take Chandler anymore. I'd rather play with myself than let him play with me, so I silently took a step back. "Little sister, you go first." Nancy crossed her arms, her short hair neat and her peach blossom eyes slightly narrowed. "Didn't you say, big sister, that I snatch everything from you? This time, I'll let you have it." Before she could finish, I turned and bolted. Not to be outdone, she dashed after me, shouting as she ran, "Are you trying to show off that you're faster than me?" "Me, not what I meant. Stay away. You go in, you go in, you go, go, go 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 go." We roared wildly while running with the effect of 1,000 horses galloping, covering the distance from the hotel to disappearing around the street corner 2,000 meters away in just 3 minutes. From the distant hotel came the sound of a 120 ambulance, mixed with someone's wailing. The young master of the James family kissed me, but I'm a 1.9 meter tall, 250-pound man. When Nancy and I got home, my mom had just finished dressing up and was about to go out. Seeing us running back drenched in sweat, she looked surprised. "Why haven't you two left yet? Trying to see who can be later?" This sounded a bit odd, but it actually wasn't strange at all, because from the moment I stepped into the house, we had already entered a mode where we couldn't help but compete. On my first day back in the Taylor family, she rolled down the stairs, but it didn't trouble me because I rolled down right after her. In the ambulance, when she vomited blood, I rolled my eyes. When she convulsed, I screamed. In short, that day was utter chaos for the whole family. Our parents kept running from her hospital bed to mine and then rushing back to hers. The look in each other's eyes made it clear. Neither of us was an easy person to deal with. We competed over everything: height, weight, the length of our hair, the number of clothes we owned, who stepped out the door first, and even who looked taller lying in bed. So, it wasn't at all unreasonable for my mom to suspect we were still competing over something. The moment I saw my mom, my fighting spirit ignited once again. I jumped up to grab the teapot in the living room, while she kicked off her high heels and dashed into the kitchen, holding a steaming cup of floral tea with a scalded arm, and her clutching a plate of sliced fruit with a cut finger. We both rushed to my mom at the same time. "Mom, have some tea/fruit." My mom was utterly stunned by us. She silently stood up and then bolted away in a flash. It's not really her fault. After all, the older brother who tried to break up our last fight is still lying in the hospital. After being reborn, I decided to cut off all contact with Chandler. But Mom and Dad are non-negotiable. Nancy won't get a single penny of the Taylor family fortune. To achieve this, I need a long-term plan. For example, Nancy often brings something into my room and says in a sickly sweet voice, "Sister, I'm coming in. I brought you something delicious. Let's eat together." Then as soon as the door closed, her face turned cold. She ate everything in her hands and then screamed while smashing the plate. When Mom and Dad came in, she would cry pitifully. Sister said I'm not worthy of eating with her, ate everything, and then threw the plate at my face. Then my dad would beat me harshly. "Your sister is so humble before you, and you still dare to bully her. Where is your heart?" I sneered. If I let her succeed again this time, my rebirth would be in vain. On the first day of my rebirth, I installed 80 cameras in my room. That evening, everyone was happily eating together when Nancy pulled her old trick again, carrying a plate into my room. The moment she stepped in, she froze. "What, are you stargazing in here? The whole room is covered in red dots. Couldn't you at least get some hidden ones? Are you really that broke?" I sneered. "You're not worthy of me." Then I warily shut my mouth, because Nancy's smirk was already uncontrollable. She must be up to something, so I pounced on her and pinned her down. After several minutes of wrestling, I successfully yanked off her little camisole and found a voice recorder. "Sister, how could you do this to me?" I said pitifully into the recorder. "You tore your own clothes and pretended to be the victim. Do you want Mom and Dad to hit me?" Nancy said, "Olivia, aren't you afraid of setting up so many cameras only to have it backfire on you?" I sneered. "These 40 cameras haven't even been activated yet. What's there to fear?" Before she even finished speaking, she jumped up and slapped me, cursing, "Damn it, you should have said so earlier. If I'd known the cameras were useless, I would have beaten you up long ago." I silently covered my face. "The other 40 are on." She froze completely, standing there motionless as over 20 voice recorders clattered out of her pockets. Given that we both had dirt on each other, neither of us had the upper hand, and we'd already exchanged blows. We agreed to delete all the evidence and start from scratch. After fighting with Nancy all day, we ended up sending second brother to the hospital too, and finally, things quieted down. Lying in bed, I kept wondering, who was that woman next to Chandler? Chandler seemed indifferent, even slightly disgusted, by the deaths of me and Nancy. That woman, though frightened, didn't appear panicked either. Both he and that woman didn't seem particularly surprised by the deaths of me and Nancy. Was it a premeditated plan? All of Chandler's time was occupied by me and Nancy. I had informants watching him at the company, and people keeping an eye on him on the streets, apart from frequently visiting my house to chat and play games with my two brothers. He had no other hobbies. For a woman to successfully win Chandler over right under the noses of me and Nancy under such circumstances, what a terrifying existence she must be. It's impossible for such a woman to exist. The only possibility is that Nancy didn't keep a close eye on Chandler, that useless piece of trash. Useless people don't deserve to live. I ordered a big bag of peanuts online. Nancy's allergic to them. I'm going to grind them into powder and sprinkle it everywhere I go tomorrow. Goodbye, Nancy. This time, you won't be able to drag me down anymore. I just didn't expect the real culprit to show up soon. Early the next morning, as I was about to leave with the peanut powder, a Taoist priest came in with talismans, bringing the whole family along. "The evil spirit is right here. As long as we cut her into 1,000 pieces, the family will be safe." My father looked grave. "Olivia, don't blame me. There have been many troubles at home lately. The master said it's because you came back, disrupting the family's fortune. If this continues, we'll inevitably face a bloody disaster." Me, this fortune teller is oddly accurate. If he hadn't come today, I would have killed Nancy, but I had to make a last-ditch effort. I was just about to speak when Nancy suddenly dropped to her knees, hugging Dad's leg as tears streamed down her face. "Daddy, don't make sister leave. It's fine if I get hit by a car when I go out, get struck by flower pots when I go downstairs, get chased by wild dogs on trips, get hit by a train while driving, and end up dying alone in the wilderness. But our family must stay together." Dad had been somewhat hesitant before, but his expression immediately darkened upon hearing this. My mother played the peacemaker, covering her mouth with a hesitant expression. "Maybe we should consult someone else. Invite both Buddha and God to take a look." I clapped for my mom. "Mom's right. Although I spent 18 years with my adoptive parents, bringing them from the slums all the way to Wall Street, some people just aren't blessed with good fortune. Maybe they can't handle the prosperity I bring. Better not let me ruin the whole family. My father had always dreamed of taking his company public. Hearing this, his eyes immediately lit up with an unusual gleam. To be honest, out of everyone in the room, he changed the most. His eyes flickered like a color-changing LED light. Shifting from one expression to another, I seized the moment. Dealing with evil spirits is no small matter. Relying on just one master isn't reliable. Wait a moment. I immediately called two people over, one a Buddhist monk, the other a priest. The monk, with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor, shook his head and pointed at us, saying, "Everything is about cause and effect. This girl has a destiny that brings prosperity to her family, her husband, and even her neighbors. But if someone wronged her in a past life or did something unjust, they won't benefit from her fortune in this lifetime." The priest, wielding holy water, splashed it everywhere. "You're all possessed by demons. I'll perform an exorcism for you." My mother was holding a wad of cash, giving some to the Taoist priest, then to the Buddhist monk, and then to the priest, keeping herself happily busy. Meanwhile, Nancy and I stood with arms crossed, glaring at each other, our gazes practically sparking with visible tension in the air. "It's just summoning spirits. She summons one, I'll summon two." Watching her rub her armpit in frustration, as if nursing a brewing case of mastitis, I figured it was time for me to make my move. I quietly moved closer to her, clutching the peanut powder in my pocket. As long as I could sprinkle it unnoticed, I could later claim she was scared to death by a Taoist priest, then my mission would be accomplished. Just as I raised my hand high, ready to scatter the peanut powder, my two brothers' voices suddenly came from outside the door. "Dad, Mom, our sister is back." I froze. What sister was this now? Then came a sweet, coquettish laugh, and a pair of high heels studded with diamonds came into view first. My pupils shrank. I knew those heels all too well. In our previous lives, Nancy and I both met our end because of these ridiculously glamorous high heels. Blessed be the Heavenly Lord, Amitabha. Amen. Thank goodness she's always worn the same pair of shoes. I hesitated for a moment, then turned to look at Nancy, only to find her staring back at me with an equally complicated expression. Yes, she recognized these shoes too. Before I could say anything, she lashed out first. "A few days ago, when I went shoe shopping, was it you who snatched my custom-made pair?" "Well, so that's what you remembered." I was trying to guess the identity of the owner of these high heels. When Chandler had hooked up with her, and how much responsibility they bore for our deaths, when I saw my father stand up cheerfully, walk over, and take the girl's hand. "Olivia, Nancy, I must formally introduce you. This is my youngest daughter Jenny, who's been missing for 19 years. I said, "Dad, just how many daughters do you have?" My father looked at me and Nancy with some disdain. "Actually, neither of you is my real daughter. Nancy was a case of mistaken identity, and when you, Olivia, came back, we weren't sure if our own daughter would ever return, so we decided to keep you just in case. If Jenny hadn't been found, you would have been our real daughter." "What does that mean?" "So after I was rescued by the police back then, you knew I wasn't your daughter, but you still kept me." Even more shocking was when my father continued, "Back then, it was said that our family's daughter would face a calamity. I thought the two of you were tough enough to handle it if disaster struck, so Jenny was raised outside the family until the calamity passed, so we were just kept around to ward off disaster." My father didn't hesitate at all, directly pulling Jenny in front of us. Originally, Jenny was supposed to stay outside for a while longer, but Chandler simply couldn't wait any longer. Plus, with so many masters here today, the Taylor family's matters can be resolved together. The way he looked at Jenny was full of heartache, completely different from how he looked at me and Nancy. "My daughter can't keep staying outside, unable to return home while you two lunatics reap all the benefits." Meanwhile, Jenny's gaze at us was somewhat complicated. "How are you still alive?" After speaking out of habit, she covered her mouth, then beamed with a smile. "Hello, sisters, please guide me well in the future." Me Nancy, "Sure. Looking forward to it." Meanwhile, the three grandmasters nearby were no longer in a confrontational stance but huddled in a corner whispering, their faces full of gossipy expressions. "The divine beings of Buddhism, Taoism, and the imperial path have now achieved great harmony in our home." My father looked at the Taoist priest who had just entered. "Priest, my youngest daughter's calamity should be over by now, right?" After all, you said she would face a blood-related disaster. Now that these two adopted daughters of ours are constantly seeing blood, surely the bloodshed must be nearly exhausted." Suddenly, I felt a chill in my heart. Ever since I returned, my parents had never shown obvious favoritism toward anyone. One day they would side with one, the next day with the other. Sometimes we suffered losses, sometimes we were protected. Because of this, our rivalry grew increasingly intense, each of us trying to outdo the other in front of our parents, but they never stopped us. Instead, they subtly encouraged us to fight even more fiercely. At this moment, the so-called eldest and second brothers who we supposedly sent to the hospital also returned. With smiles on their faces, they pulled Jenny to sit down, showing not a single sign of injury from start to finish. Nancy and I stood there dumbfounded, neither of us saying a word. Turns out, neither of us had ever received our parents' favoritism. Instead, we were just two fighting cocks they deliberately pitted against each other. When we grew tired of fighting and wanted to stop, they would sprinkle some feed to cheer us on, urging us to keep fighting. My father didn't notice the changes in our expressions at all and continued talking to the Taoist priest. "Please take a look. If these two rebellious daughters perish together, will our family's fortune improve?" The Taoist priest was actually hired by Nancy, so he quickly waved his hands. No need, just catching the root cause of the evil will be enough." "My father, Olivia, go with the priest, do whatever he says." Nancy made it very clear. "You are that evil presence." Before he could finish, Nancy spoke up. "Dad, you misunderstood. Sister isn't the evil presence. What the master meant was the cockroach in sister's room." "Damn it, your house is the one full of cockroaches. Your whole place is crawling with them." My father frowned tightly. "Stop fooling around. Hurry up and catch the evil spirit. I need to take Jenny home soon. How can my own daughter keep staying outside?" The Taoist priest, taking Nancy's cue, nodded and said, "Infinite Heavenly Lord, it's the cockroach in Mrs. room. Once I catch it, everything will be fine, naturally." My father didn't believe such nonsense and turned to the master and priest beside him. "What do you two think?" These two were invited by me, so naturally they nodded along. It was indeed that cockroach. Thus, these three experts rolled up their sleeves, dropped their weapons, and started catching cockroaches in my room. I glanced at Nancy. Her eyes were slightly red, and her expression was a mix of complexity and frustration. Silently, I stuffed a handful of peanut powder I had already grabbed into my mouth and quietly refused. "This peanut powder is so spicy, it's making my eyes water." Meanwhile, Jenny has already started picking out rooms in the villa. After walking around the house, she chose Nancy's room. "Dad, I want to stay here." Just as Nancy was about to speak, my father said, "Nancy, you should move out. You've lived in this room for so long. It's time for a change." My expression was complicated because I had also asked for this room when I returned. We fought tooth and nail over it, even tumbling down the stairs. But in the end, I still didn't get the room. But now, with just a single word from Jenny, she could take the room away effortlessly. Nancy's expression was equally complicated. She had always believed she was the beloved daughter of their parents, but the harsh truth brutally reminded her that, in front of Jenny, she was nothing more than a ridiculous clown. Jenny moved into Nancy's room, and to celebrate her return, their parents and brothers decided to go out for a lavish dinner. They enthusiastically discussed where to go, then turned around and asked, "Which one of you two is coming?" I was a bit confused. My eldest brother kindly explained, "Only one of you two can come, the other has to stay and watch the house." Watch the house? My ass, since when do wealthy families need to personally guard their homes? Are all the servants and security just for show? Isn't this just trying to make us keep fighting? I was about to speak when Nancy said, "Then let my sister go." "I won't go. I'm not feeling well." After saying this, she turned to go back to her room but then remembered that the room wasn't hers anymore, freezing in place. Yet I suddenly blurted out, "You can stay in my room. That dinner tonight, better not to have gone at all." I sat silently in the corner, watching as Mom, Dad, and my two brothers kept serving Jenny dishes, completely ignoring my presence. My mom is usually very good to me, but today the only thing she said to me was, "Olivia, since you came today and Nancy didn't, she'll probably throw a tantrum when you get back. You should give in to her a little and be more sensible." Okay, in the past, I would have taken those words to heart and found an excuse to pick a fight with Nancy when I got home, but today, I just felt cold, chilled from the top of my head to the soles of my feet. I sat quietly for a while, and another person arrived at the banquet, Chandler. Chandler was still as charming and dashing as ever, courteous and humble to all women. And I had been madly infatuated with his central air conditioning personality, but now, he was no longer that central air conditioning at all. He didn't even glance at me and instead went straight to sit beside Jenny, personally peeling shrimp for her. You should know, whether in this life or the previous one, his shrimp had always been peeled by me and Nancy, because Chandler loved eating shrimp. The two of us would immediately start fiercely competing to peel shrimp for him the moment we sat down at the table. Chandler always picked at his food, taking a few bites before distributing the rest to those around him. Though Nancy and I were annoyed, our focus wasn't on him. Watching him and Jenny being so affectionate, I suspected they had known each other for a long time. But because of the rumor that the Taylor family's daughter would face a bloody disaster, Jenny had never been allowed to return. Noticing my persistent gaze, Chandler flashed a smug look in his eyes. Olivia, it seems you've finally outdone Nancy to sit by my side, but I must warn you, Jenny isn't like Nancy. If you lay a finger on her, you won't even get to be my lover. A flicker of displeasure crossed Jenny's face. You already have me, why would you need a lover? I'll get angry. Chandler coaxed her. They're just trivial things, they can't possibly shake your position. Completely unaware that I had already lunged onto the table, using both hands and feet to firmly smash a plate of unpeeled crayfish right into his face, I was locked in the basement by my parents, and before that, I was beaten severely. The entire Taylor family joined in, with Jenny covering her eyes and sobbing. I've never hit anyone before, I don't dare, but while the others only gave me superficial wounds, Jenny kicked me right in the pit of my stomach, leaving me in such pain that I couldn't recover for a long time. And she even fainted from fright. I lay on the ground, feeling the pain throughout my body, wondering if I would be locked in here for the rest of my life. Just as I was thinking this, I heard movement at the door. With great effort, I turned my head to look and saw a few pancakes being slipped through the gap under the door, followed by Nancy's slightly awkward voice. Olivia, are you okay? I hadn't cried when I was mocked or beaten earlier, but the voice of my lifelong rival made me feel like shedding tears. I forced myself to respond coldly. What do you want? Nancy said. I heard them say they're going to lock you up for a month, with no lights or internet. She paused and added, they said if I can keep an eye on you, they'll make me the second young lady of the family and give me company shares, and if I can make you submit, they'll even grant the real Taylor family members official recognition. Hearing this, my heart ached. Haven't we been fighting all these years just to earn our family's approval? But after all this time, even after dying once, we still haven't gotten it. But Nancy snapped, screw that, who the hell wants to keep being their daughter? Looking back now, I realize I spent the first 20 years of my life trapped in their mind games. What a joke. She grew angrier as she spoke, finally smashing the lock on the basement door and forcing it open. Come out, Olivia, let's not waste time with them anymore, we'll live our own lives. But I didn't leave. Instead, I said quietly, in our past lives, we were probably murdered. It turned out that after the Taylor family had Jenny, their business plummeted, nearly bankrupting them. That's when a so-called expert appeared, claiming that the Taylor family's daughter must endure extreme hardships for their business to recover. They couldn't bear to see Jenny suffer, so they adopted Nancy from the orphanage. When Nancy was little, she would inexplicably get into accidents, falling down the stairs, getting hit by flower pots, or being beaten up on her way home from school, all of which became routine occurrences. But as Nancy grew older, she gradually learned to protect herself. While my father's greed only intensified, at that time, he spotted me, having just escaped from the Byers family and desperately searching for my biological parents, and spent a little money to forge a fake paternity test before bringing me home. From the moment I arrived, the entire family had already begun scheming to pit us against each other. They keep releasing limited resources, pretending the scales occasionally tip, waiting for us to fight over them. It suddenly occurred to me, on the day we both died in our previous lives, my father was at a critical stage with a project. Once successful, the Taylor family's position in the business world would have been unshakable, so perhaps our deaths were planned all along. No wonder they never intervened no matter how fiercely we fought, either offering comfort or fanning the flames. Our miscarriages, and the tragic deaths of our children, may not have been accidents, but rather the handiwork of the seemingly gentle Taylor family who raised us. What should we do? I asked Nancy. She smiled without speaking. yet I seemed to understand what she wanted to say. Yes, we've fought for 2 lifetimes, battled for so many years, that the other feels as familiar as another version of ourselves. The Taylor family had just finished their meal and entered the house cheerfully with Chandler. The moment they pushed the door open, everyone was stunned. Holy cow! Was this a typhoon throwing a party in the villa? Every piece of furniture, decoration, and appliance was completely wrecked. Not a single spot was left untouched. Right in the center of the typhoon's path lay the butler, his clothes tattered like rags, his limbs twitching. My father looked utterly shocked. What happened here? The butler spat out a mouthful of plaster dust. The eldest and second young miss got into a fight, and it escalated. They started smashing things, and as they smashed, awakened superpowers, Chandler asked with a completely bewildered look. Looking at this mess, you'd need at least some kind of shockwave or Rasengan level ultimate move to cause this kind of damage. No, they're injured. My dad's face lit up with excitement. Then where are they now? They fought all the way to the hospital, the butler said, scrambling to his feet. The eldest young lady coughed up blood half a meter high, and the second young lady's arms and legs went flying. My father slapped his thigh and exclaimed, "Success!" The whole family was as happy as if it were New Year's, leaving the butler utterly bewildered. My father happened to be working on a very important project recently, with one of us severely injured and the other disabled. The project was bound to succeed. He was in such a good mood that when I called him crying and begging for some medical expenses, he happily obliged and generously said, "Good child, I'll give you 500,000, get well soon. And don't tell your sister, she might cause trouble over this money, and even I can't stop her." My mom followed suit and called Nancy. "Nancy, dear, I heard you went to the hospital. I'll visit you as soon as I'm done with work. Here's some money for now, but make sure Olivia doesn't find out. She's always been domineering, so stay away from her." With that, she gave 600,000, sitting with me at the airport. Nancy said, "I'm worth more than you." I said, "Haha, because you're heavier." She was silent for a moment before asking, "Is our income based on weight or something?" I weigh 50 kilograms, and she's indeed 10 kilograms heavier than me. We both fell silent, our hearts bearing no small wounds. With the money our parents gave us, we found the so-called master from back then. The master came out to meet us in a wheelchair. Good grief, the man had lost both legs, his right arm was in a cast, and despite being only in his 40s, he didn't have a single tooth left. Wearing dentures instead, his hair had thinned into a monk's tonsure, and he was so gaunt he looked like a walking skeleton. Nancy said he had done too many shady things. I quickly covered her mouth, afraid we might become another one of those shady deeds. The expert sighed upon learning our purpose. "This matter has weighed on my conscience. It's unfair to sustain a family's prosperity at the cost of suffering for both of you." The master was indeed quite skilled and well known in the circle back then. He didn't care much about karma and was willing to do anything for money. As a result, despite amassing great wealth over the years, his health deteriorated, and his children died one after another. He said that as long as we repent, leave the Taylor family, and stop the infighting, the spell he cast will naturally lose its effect, and we can choose to return to the Taylor family for revenge, or to seek out our biological parents. The elder rasped out a warning, "Let me give you some advice. The Taylor family isn't to be trifled with. Rather than wasting your lives on revenge, you still have your own families. Focus on your own lives instead." Nancy said I'm not reconciled. She was an orphan and had no attachment to her family from the start. But I wanted to find my own. After more than 2 months, I finally located my biological parents' home. With a mix of anxiety and hope, I approached, only to find the house that should have belonged to my parents surrounded by funeral wreaths. My parents died. After searching for me for 20 years without success, they both committed suicide in despair. Just the night before I found them, I stood there numbly, watching strangers coming and going in that room. Just a day ago, it had been my home, my haven. Now, the person who used to wait for me was gone. My eyes were sore until someone came over and held me in their arms. "It's Nancy," she said. "It's okay, you still have me, I'll still be your sister from now on." I hugged her tightly, smiling brightly. "Okay." A gentle smile appeared on her face for the first time, but countless legally questionable thoughts had already flashed through our minds. After we left, the Taylor family's business began to decline, and of course, It wasn't just because the master's feng shui formations stopped working. After years of education and influence from the Taylor family, both Nancy and I found it effortless to trip them up, and we even found a formidable ally. The Zhou family, the arch-rival of the Taylor family, had been engaged in a business war with them for over a decade. They were consistently suppressed by the Taylors, likely due to some mysterious arrangement, every time they were on the verge of a surefire comeback. Their projects would inevitably encounter all sorts of unexpected mishaps. To catch the attention of Zhou Ming, the CEO of Zhou Group, we devised a meticulous plan to seduce him. I heard Zhou Ming has a particular fondness for the delicate white flower type, especially the kind that's bullied by their wealthy family, like the youngest daughter. How do I know? Well, my elementary school classmate is the wife of Zhou Ming's assistant, who specifically helps him hunt down all sorts of CEO and helpless heiress romance novels to read. This news is absolutely reliable. So Nancy, on Zhou Ming's usual route, gave me a pitiful-looking makeup and then started slapping me with the speed of a rotating fan. I was howling from the pain, barely managing to maintain my composure. As expected, Zhou Ming stopped to shield me in his arms and took me back to his villa. He said to me, "Olivia, don't be afraid, I've got you." I cried with genuine emotion. Nancy's slaps were truly substantial. Those extra 20 pounds on me weren't for nothing. Meanwhile, Nancy had already climbed to an executive position at their partner company, working with me from the inside, and the Taylor family's business collapsed spectacularly. My parents, no, I should call them Mr. and Mrs. Taylor now, were utterly shocked. Never expecting our departure to have such a massive impact on them, the Taylors began calling us frequently, their words dripping with hints of wanting us to come home. "Mr. Taylor, Olivia, actually, Mom and Dad, me, wah, you only love Nancy and not me, wah, Mr. Taylor, no, Olivia, listen to me, wah, Mr. Taylor, Olivia, stop crying first and listen to me, Dad, you don't care at all that I'm crying, boo-hoo-hoo, Mr. Taylor." Every phone call goes like this. He has no choice but to message me on WeChat, and every time I say how miserable I am, he keeps sending red packets. I take the money but still refuse to go home. Mrs. Taylor often approached Nancy as well, and Nancy was even more blunt. "Not going back. The whole family is a bunch of broke losers and scumbags." After multiple failed attempts to bring us back, the Taylor family's business struggles worsened. Some time later, I heard they were planning to take Jenny hiking. I immediately called Chandler. "Your in-laws are planning to kill their daughter for insurance money. Your precious darling is about to die." Chandler was shocked and immediately drove over, just in time to see Mr. Taylor pushing Jenny off the cliff. He called the police right away. Mr. Taylor had only intended to injure Jenny slightly to resolve the current predicament, but instead, he ended up sending himself to jail. Jenny was taken away from the Taylor family by Chandler. Mrs. Taylor was left alone to clean up the mess of the Taylor family. She tried to visit Jenny several times but was always turned away by Chandler. Later, Mrs. Taylor brought home another girl. The girl was thin and small, with timid eyes, and was tricked by Mrs. Taylor. "You are our biological daughter, but you were taken away by traffickers before." The little girl looked utterly confused. "Didn't our whole family fall from the cable car?" She was 19 now. When she was 6, her family took her out for fun, but the cable car had an accident, and everyone fell to their deaths. Only she survived, lifted up by her family. Mrs. Taylor said, "Those weren't your family, that was the traffickers' whole family." The little girl fell silent as Mrs. Taylor continued, "It was them who took you away from our family back then. You shouldn't feel grateful to those kidnappers." She named the little girl Ella, hoping she would remember her parents' kindness. Ella silently accepted the name and quietly followed Mrs. Taylor. But bruises and scars often appeared on her face. The Taylor family's business plummeted, and Mrs. Taylor could no longer resort to ordinary methods. She began targeting Ella directly. The Taylor family's business was barely getting back on its feet. Meanwhile, I secretly messaged Jenny, "Your parents don't want you anymore." Jenny immediately ran back home and bumped right into Ella. By then, Jenny's belly was slightly rounded. She was already carrying Chandler's child. Seeing Ella, she flew into a rage. "You all keep bringing daughters home one after another. What do you take me for?" Jenny didn't care about any business matters. All she knew was that her parents had hurt her for the sake of business and kept bringing daughters into the house. She maliciously tormented Ella, hitting her face with a ruler, kicking her stomach, and burning her hair with a lighter. Ella tried to fight back but was pinned down firmly by several servants. Ella was beaten until her face was covered in blood, while Mrs. Taylor clearly knew what was happening but hid inside her room, unwilling to let her own daughter see blood. Yet, she had no problem with her own daughter abusing others. When Ella was nearly tortured to death, Chandler appeared, the moment he saw the scene before him. His face darkened, he bent down to pick up Ella and angrily scolded Jenny. "I never expected you to be such a vicious and cruel woman." Jenny's face turned ashen, and she fell to her knees with a thud. Chandler still married a daughter of the Taylor family, but he married Ella. In his words, Ella was like a resilient little white flower in the midst of a storm, making people unable to resist protecting her. This ending wasn't unexpected, but the reason feels a bit familiar. Jenny completely lost her mind, rushing over to fight Chandler desperately. In the scuffle, she took a hard fall. The baby was still there, but it was born prematurely. The baby was kept in an incubator for 2 weeks before being stolen. Jenny went mad searching everywhere for the child, eventually losing her sanity completely. "My baby, my baby, my baby." Meanwhile, Mrs. Taylor was also in agony. "Years ago, she had taken me away from my biological parents out of selfishness, causing us to be separated forever. She was also the mastermind behind the deaths of Ella's family, orchestrating the cable car accident. However, after Ella became an orphan, she deemed her too thin and difficult to raise, so she took Nancy instead. Now, her only daughter had gone insane, her grandchild had been taken away, her husband was in prison, and the Taylor family business had completely collapsed. She had no choice but to take care of Jenny every day. And one late night when Jenny had a relapse, she mistook her for the child trafficker who had secretly taken the baby and stabbed her to death with a fruit knife. Jenny was sent to a mental hospital, and Chandler visited her every day. I initially thought Chandler was a devoted person, albeit a bit too affectionate, but not long after, news broke that Jenny was pregnant again. Well, as expected, human nature can't be trusted too much. Chandler knelt before Ella, begging for forgiveness. And Ella smiled at him with a saintly expression as she forgave him. "I forgive you. After all, you are the child's father." Chandler looked pleasantly surprised. You're pregnant." Out of a compensatory mindset, Chandler pampered Ella excessively. However, within just a few days, he reverted to his old habits and started philandering again. Not long after, he came across an article in a public account push notification on his phone, a story about dating someone with mental illness. Reading it made him feel restless and feverish, prompting him to seek out Jenny again. This time, Jenny took action once more and stabbed him to death. "Your writing is really, Olivia, you're a pervert." Nancy clicked her tongue while reading my article. "I actually love what you wrote. Liking this kind of stuff makes you the pervert." We glared at each other for a moment before suddenly realizing we were just the author and reader of a twisted story, both loving it yet unable to resist calling each other out. And the most loyal reader of this story was Chandler. Truly loyal, loyal beyond death. Ella came to see us, holding Chandler's only child in her arms, her face filled with the satisfaction of vengeance. During the cable car incident, the James family was also involved. Chandler merely glanced at me in the crowd and said he liked me, so the Taylor family had my entire family killed. Later, they claimed I was too thin and abandoned me in an orphanage. Now, at last, I've had my revenge. Back then, the eldest and second brothers of the Taylor family were also involved in the incident. The child in her arms is the sole descendant of the James family, and everything the James family owns will be hers in the future. As for us, the Taylor family has fallen completely. And it no longer matters. We don't even care about the Taylor family's measly possessions. We can earn them ourselves, because neither of us expected that the same lethal force we used against each other would become even more devastating when we worked together. But truth be told, there was a tiny flaw in our plan. We weren't entirely sure Chandler would fall for Ella and abandon Jenny for her. Nancy said, "Chandler will definitely fall for it. He's particularly fond of the delicate, innocent type of women." I was a bit confused. He likes delicate, innocent girls. Zhou Ming also likes that type. Why do all the CEOs have a thing for delicate, innocent girls? As soon as I finished speaking, I noticed Nancy's eyes darting around, avoiding my gaze. I knew her too well. Grabbing her by the collar, I demanded, "Tell me, what's really going on, Nancy?" I won't tell. I raised my hand and swung at her, and she immediately fought back. once again. We were locked in a fierce brawl, slapping and hitting each other. Looks like this battle between the real and fake heiresses is going to last a lifetime. After hearing the two stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.